Hi, good morning and welcome to another Front Porch Conversation here at Advent Christian Village. We're on the front porch at the Copeland Community Center, and for a day after Labor Day, it is nice and cool for a change. Now, I'm a native Floridian, so we don't expect this to last this cool until through fall, but it's pleasant today. I'm happy to have our guest with us today, Charles Chuck Martel and his daughter, Michelle. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for inviting
us.
I have gotten to visit with you a little bit, and I know that you're very new members to the village. You want to share with our members where you live?
We live in Edgewood Terrace.
On Millsite Lane?
On Millsite Lane, yes ma'am.
Well, and I understand you're having quite a fun adventure there with wildlife.
We do. It's a lovely place to live at. We have deer and we have, oh my gosh, raccoons and squirrels and hawks. So it is lovely to see it every day. We really enjoy it. It's very peaceful.
Mm-hmm. And Chuck, why don't you tell our visitors where you were born and a little bit about your early life?
Okay. Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. And I lived there through my youth up until the time I left to go into the military. And attended schools, public schools there in Washington.
Tell our viewers where your playground was when you were growing up.
Well, I was very lucky. I had a playground right on the corner. I lived in a city block, and on the corner, on one end, there was an elementary school, which had a playground with it. Across the street from that was a park, Holger Park, I believe was the name of it. So we had plenty of runaround space there.
And you told me you often played around another well-known building, too.
Yes, we were close enough. I lived on D Street Southeast, 3rd and D Street Southeast. That was to the Capitol. If you're familiar with the geography up there, the Capitol is centered and then the streets run out from there. So it was within walking distance to get up to the Capitol and get access. We could climb all over the place. Then back in those days, security wasn't an issue at all. So we had a lot of room to roam. And we certainly enjoyed it.
You got to have a front row seat.
Yes, I did. Saw some of the events, not all of them, but some of them were quite interesting.
Michelle, where were you born?
I was born in Cheverly, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. in the mid-50s, towards the late 50s, yes. And then we moved to California and on to Florida.
Yes.
And lived in Georgia for a short time. So, Dad, where else?
You spent most of your youth in Florida.
In Florida, in South Florida. And where else did you play at in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Washington being kind of a metroplex of those days, they had an amusement park called Glen Echo, which was on the far side of Washington from where I lived. But in those days, you could buy a streetcar pass for, I think, $1.25 for a month, and that was unlimited rides. So we took full advantage of that and went out there to the amusement park.
Didn't one of your...
In the summer months, in the swimming months, warm months, we go down to the beaches on Chesapeake Bay. So we had both ends of it tied up.
Did one of our relatives work up near the White House?
Yes, well, my grandfather was chief of the catalog division, Library of Congress, and I got to visit with him many times in his work setting. So So I could run around through the book stacks up there at the Library of Congress too.
Probably not a lot of people can say that.
No, that's true. It was unique.
Well, it's a beautiful place to work.
Yes,
I'm sure.
it was.
And you showed me a beautiful book about him.
Yes, the Liber Amicorum was a book, a collection of congratulatory communication to him on his 80th birthday, which they had bound and presented to him. It was quite interesting. He had letters from all over the world. He was quite a linguist. He could speak and write in the language, I think 6 languages.
Wow.
His birthplace was Zurich, Switzerland, and that's where he grew up. So he was multilingual.
And are you multilingual?
That's Spanglish.
Well, that can get you a ways or in trouble sometimes too, kid.
Yes, it certainly can.
Michelle, what are some of your fond memories of growing up?
I grew up in South Florida, mainly in northern Palm Beach County when there weren't any people there yet. And just spending a lot of time at the ocean, playing in the woods. We lived off the Intercoastal Waterway. It was across the street, so we were able to spend quite a bit of time there. Every Sunday it seemed like we'd get out of church, we'd come home and Dad and Mom had the cooler packed up and off we'd go with 5 children and maybe some friends, other family friends, and we had the whole beach there, so it was wonderful.
No worry about social distancing.
No
right?
social distancing. It was a lovely place, and you didn't have to worry about your children or anything like that. It was very peaceful. I think that's what I like so much here is it's quiet and peaceful, and you don't feel threatened by anything. So it's a great place to be.
Chuck, you talked about going into the military. You want to tell our visitors?
Yes, I entered the Marine Corps in August of 1950, and was in for a 4-year enlistment. Was discharged in August of 1954. Got to see some beautiful country over in Korea, if you could call it that at that time. But I made 2 trips over there, and I learned then that I never wanted to live in a climate with was so much cold weather. I swore that once I got out of there I would always live in a warm climate. So here I am.
And after the military, what was your next?
Well, I decided when I was in the military I needed some more education, and I went to school on the GI Bill in Washington at the Capitol Radio Engineering Institute, and completed their coursework, and fully intended to become a broadcast engineer. But along came a very interesting offer to go into the computer business, which I accepted, and went to California just about right away to do some training with them, and worked in the computer industry for many, many years, both on the private sector and the public sector as well.
So you were pretty ground floor involved
Yes, I was.
in the rise of the computer industry.
Yes. It's been a real ride, as they say.
And tell us about you have children other than Michelle?
Yes, we have a total of 8, including what one fellow said it was his natural children, those by his wife, and then the unnatural, who are a step-parent. So we had a total of 8. Not quite a baseball team, but we got getting close.
In a pinch, you could have made it work, huh?
Hopefully.
And Michelle, what about you? After you graduated from high school in Florida?
Well, actually, I didn't graduate from high school. I was a prodigal, and I left home very young. So I left and moved to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta to Northern California, and Northern California to Illinois, back to California, and then to Texas, back to California, and then finally back home to Florida. So
And you've been back in Florida quite a few years.
This is the longest I've been ever lived anywhere. I've been here in Florida now for 34 years. And I worked in the electronic industry, doing quality assurance. And I worked for the Florida Chamber of Commerce, doing conferences for them in accounting. And then I worked for a major wholesale nursery out in California. I think that was my favorite job in their accounting office, because every day when you got stressed out, you could go out and walk through the greenhouse and see the flowers. It was beautiful. And then in 1989, my life took a new turn, and God put me in full-time ministry. So, yes, ways of doing things.
Tell us about some of those experiences in full-time ministry.
I first went on staff of the church, a Baptist church in Tallahassee, and was with them for 7.5 years. I was one of their office administrators and tried to keep track of our 3 pastors. And it was a joy. It was a joy. And then I was approached to go to work for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I worked for them for 7 years. I worked for the North Florida director, and I really enjoyed that. We worked with teenagers and the college students, so it was fun. And then when the Lord called me from there, I went on staff with another church in Tallahassee and was their administrator and bookstore manager, and was part of a build of a new church building. So it was a new experience. And then God moved me with Dad. I went on staff with another church as a church administrator, so down in Ocala. So that's
How
a
long
little
ago
bit
was
of it.
that?
That was in 2014. And so
you've been a team since then, the two of you.
yes, we have.
That's
Most days. We don't know who's on first some days or on second. We're together. Yeah.
You were telling me that you had been to Advent Christian Village a number of times before ever thinking about living here. Want to share with us that story?
Sure. I came to a retreat here, a women's retreat, in 1991 in the spring called Tres Dias. And I've been coming here almost every year, twice a year, serving on those retreats. And I've always loved it here. And I remember thinking, boy, what a lovely place this would be to live one day, never even knowing that that would come about.
Would you tell our viewers a little bit about Tres Dias for those who don't know?
Tres Dias is a non-denominational renewal retreat. It's led by lay people just like us, and there's clergy there, and it just strengthens your walk with Christ.
Well, I'm glad that brought you here and continued to bring you back, and now for both of you to live here.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're here. I think Dad's glad we're here. He came for the first time in October. He had never been here, and I brought him with me when I was going to serve on a retreat, and had him stay up in the lodge. And I said, these girls will take good care of you if you need anything. They know where to get me.
And they certainly did.
And they certainly did. Yes, they did. And so a little while afterwards, we talked about the possibility of coming doing a tour, and we did that. That was in November. And then in January we came again, and we put our house. Dad put his house up for sale. We put the house up for sale, and it sold in March. No, end of February. And we were here by the middle of March, right before the craziness started. But we're very grateful to be here, and what a great place to be with this time in history, to have such a safe environment to come to. It's good.
I understand you have children as well. Tell
I
us
do.
about your children.
I have 2 sons. One lives in Tallahassee, one lives in Havana, Florida. My oldest has 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren. One of them are in heaven now. She was 7 years old, or Haley. And then I have my grandson Caleb, who's 23. He lives in Orlando. And then my youngest son, they have 2 children. Renna is 8, and Sol Michelle is 12. I had to think there for a minute. And those are my 2 granddaughters. So, yeah, it's nice to have them close.
I bet. Chuck? Can you tell me how many grandchildren you have?
Oh my goodness. Start counting.
That's fine. But you have a number of
Yeah,
grandchildren.
number, I have 7.
7.
And great-grandchildren?
Oh, now you're really getting me.
Okay.
Gosh, I'll have to stop and
7.
think about that. One of my daughters lives in Illinois, and she's still having children, so the latest count is
You have 7 great-grandchildren.
7 great-grandchildren,
Okay.
yeah.
That's quite a legacy.
Yes, it is. You lay it all out on a genealogy chart, well, there's a lot of filled spaces there.
What would you say has been one of the a special moment in your life where you knew Christ was a part of your life?
In August of 1989, I had open heart surgery and was given no hope to live but God. And I was working for the Florida Chamber of Commerce at that time, and they had found an aneurysm in my heart, my aortic arch, and I was 33 years old, and they didn't think there was going to be any problem repairing it. But after 7.5 hours of surgery, when they moved me finally out into a recovery room, they told my family that if I survived the next 24 hours, I would be brain dead and paralyzed from the waist down. But God. There were 3 ladies that I worked with that went into an office and started praying for an hour. My secretary had called to find out how the surgery was going, and they told her I wasn't going to make it and what was going on. And there were 3 women there that I worked with, went into one of the offices, shut the door, and started praying. And they said an hour later, God said she's going to be fine. And I tell people jokingly now that some people say I'm still a little brain dead. But I'm walking and moving. But what that really did is renewed my relationship with God. And I remember before my surgery going down and to the chapel. It was in Tallahassee in the hospital, and just saying, God, I don't know what's going to happen. Just forgive me for everything, and just make sure my boys are taken care of. One was 12 and the other one was 16. And Dad can tell you it was a emotional day, wasn't it, Dad?
Yes, it was. It was a very emotional day.
And I didn't really realize what had happened, how extensive it was, until I stayed with my dad and my stepmother afterwards when I got out of the hospital. And every time Dad would look at me, he'd start crying. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And my best friend had come. She was in Texas. We've known each other for 54 years, and she had come at that time. And so I tricked her. We were on the phone, and she said, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing okay. She said, things were pretty rough. And I said, yeah, that's what I heard. And she said, oh, they told you. And so she just went through the whole thing and told me what had happened. And I was just, wow. And God just showed me that He never gives up on His children.
That's right.
And you always can come home. And it's been a journey since then. There's been a lot of things that have happened that's tested my faith. But I keep knowing that God is there and He is faithful.
What a wonderful witness that you've been able to share because of that too.
It's God, it's not me. I would have killed me. That's what I tell people when I share my story. I would have snuffed me out. But He's merciful, and He didn't, and I'm grateful. And He knew Dad and I were going to need each other, I guess.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are there any special things that the two of you have planned that you'd like to do when travel is a little more open and visitors can come?
Well, we have nothing on our books, but one of my sons, the oldest one, lives in South Carolina, and he has a place in the mountains of South Carolina, or North Carolina, I should say. And we plan to go visit him once the pandemic's run its course and there's no threat to anybody to do that. We'd certainly like to do that. I have a little bit of limited mobility right now after some surgery I had a few years ago. So I'm trying to work through that and see if I can become a little more flexible.
Well, there's a lot of good folks around, therapists and other people who are really an asset to helping with that.
One of the strong advantages of living in the ACV is the accessibility of all the services, and we certainly enjoy that. And coming from an area like Ocala, where it's growing leaps and bounds down there, it's nice to come back to a quiet style of life here at ACV. We really enjoy that.
Michelle, what about you?
Well, right now, anywhere that we go together. So, and that's a good thing. One place I would like to go one day is Israel. I've always in my heart wanted to take that trip, and so whether I do it here in the New Jerusalem, who knows? That I would like to do that again. And I like to go around the area and just see the different places that we haven't seen. The kids came over, I guess about a month ago, and the granddaughters, and we went to the Itchinatuckney Springs, and that is one of my most favorite places to go because you get in that water and it's like you're in another world.
But it's a good place to be on a hot day.
Oh, yes. So.
You want to tell our viewers a little more about Itchinatuckney?
Itchinatuckney Springs is about 45 minutes from here, and it is a natural spring, and it has a wonderful run. The wonderful thing about Itchinatuckney Springs is it's almost like it's been from the very beginning. There's not a lot of change to it. They have a 4.5-hour run where you can put a tube or a kayak or a raft in and just float down the river for 4.5 hours, or they have a 2.5-hour run. And it is just a great relaxing. The first time I did it with 2 girlfriends. I was working full time, and when we got done, I said, that was the most relaxing thing I've ever done in my life. It's just beautiful. The water's beautiful. There's a lot of nature to see, birds. We didn't see any alligators, so I'm sure they're out there, but you don't see them. But it's just a lovely, lovely place to go.
We're very fortunate in this part of the country, or this part of the state even, to have so many beautiful springs around us.
Yes, yes.
So for our viewers who haven't gotten a chance to go see some of the springs, and you can see them without floating down the river too.
Yes, there's several around us close, like within 15-minute drive, so it's really nice. And then we have the beautiful river here, and it's a lovely place to go to and just sit and watch the water go by.
I know, Michelle, that you are interested in volunteering at some point, and you're looking for volunteer opportunities here at the village?
Yes, anything that I can do to help. I don't really have a specific, I just like helping people. So whatever way God directs, I figure there's always something to do in some way to help someone.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, what advice would you give a young person today?
Oh my goodness. Get your education first. Choose your friends wisely. There's so much going on in the world today that's not good. And just be sincere about what you do. Believe in what you do. And you're going to be doing it most of your life. So it's hard to capsule the answer to your question, in other words. But through my experience over the years, I've learned a little bit each step along the way. Not that at this age, I'm be 89 in October, you're so wise that you know everything. That's not the case. You're learning every day. But yes, I don't know what else I could tell them. Be sincere in what you do.
Michelle, what advice would you give a young person today?
I would tell them to live in the moment that they're in so that they're not missing out on life. Because a lot of times, especially when we're younger, you think, oh, I've got tomorrow, I've got tomorrow, I've got tomorrow, but that's not always necessarily the case. So if you live in the moment and you trust God with whatever's going on in your life and just lean on Him instead of your own understanding. I'm an example of that, life might not always be easy, but it will be full, and you will have joy, and there's always something to learn every day.
And I bet you had a lot of opportunities during the time you worked with Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
I did.
Would you tell us a little bit about that experience of working with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes?
I loved working for them. We had a lot of fun. Our North Florida director, of course, was a Seminole fan, and I am a Gator fan. So we had a lot of fun just joking with that, because the athletes would come in and say, I had a Gator bobblehead doll on my desk, and they would say, what's going on here? And I'm like, get out of here, go in and see her. But the best part about that was being with young people, being with middle school and high school kids, and the college kids too. We did retreats with them every year. We had several of them, and most of them were like a leadership type retreat. And just listening to them and talking with them and reassuring, and even being able to share some of my life story with them as a young person who left home for a while. And so that was a good thing. But I was their office manager. That's what my real job was. But being with the young people, I really enjoyed that.
There's certainly a lot of ways to minister, aren't there?
There are. If you and you can find them every day. If you just look, sometimes it just must be maybe a smile to a person, or an encouragement, or just saying hello. There's so much that we can do.
Well, on that, let's all smile and tell everybody watching. Thanks for watching today.
Thank you.